Father, now that you've reminded us that you do see the other side, when we only see with our best, we only see the storm, you see the other side. And so wherever we sit today, whatever is going through and passing through our lives, whatever is turning us and spinning us, we can sit here in your house and trust you. So we open our hearts and our minds to hear your voice, knowing that you see the other side of our storm, and that your word today can speak to us in assurance. So let it be. In the name of Jesus. Amen. Yeah. Think this scenario through, because I know it's happened. I mean, come on. We've all driven the roads before. Just think this through. You've got someone tailgating you, all right? So you're picturing this, yeah. You can picture it. Maybe even this week, you've got someone tailgating you. Man, they are tailgating you. Oh, even that just makes your blood pressure just go up a few notches. Your heart beats a little faster. And then, at an opportune time, they whip out around you, and as they are passing you, their face is just pressed against the glass. They're eyeballing you, every bit of it. Just before they break eye contact, they raise their hand and stick out a finger. Come on, your day was just fine before. And then they pull in, and then they whip back in front of you, and you can see them tap their brakes and slow down below the posted speed limit. Come on. Come on, you saints. What's going through your mind? What's going through your body? You baptized, heaven-bound saints. Huh? I'm writing this out. I kid you not. I'm writing this. I'm typing it out on my laptop. Had a few hours early Thursday morning. Grandma Graybill, of the young people that just sang, is watching our two offspring. And so I'm over at Barnes & Noble, just doing some writing and reading for this. I'm typing this out. And then I'm headed back to my own office to finish writing it out. Down I-25, just past the 402 exit, the exit there for right there about when you get to Johnson's Corner there. And what you know, some guy is just riding my rear bumper, and so he whips out around me, headed down to, I'm going 5 over. I don't know what his problem was, but I'm going 5 over. He whips out around me, and what you know, all the way, eye contact. And then he whips back in front of me and slows down. I just wrote about you. But what if you this happens to you, and you just happen to know, somehow, some way, you happen to know that there is, as they speed off down the interstate, you just happen to know that there is 3 miles up a state trooper. You know it. You just happen to know there's a state trooper 3 miles up, and so, hey, listen, YouTube is full of it. I mean, you type in YouTube, instant karma, and that will give you videos of people who have videoed other people, never themselves, right? Other people getting what they call instant karma. Hey, you did something, and it comes right back at you. But 3 miles up, there's a state trooper. Now, while we're imagining the situation, let's also imagine that you just happen to download that person's cell phone, the person that just tailgated you, waved at you in an unfriendly way and pulled in front of you again. You just happen to have their cell number right there. 3 miles up, as they speed off, you know there's a state trooper, and you have their cell phone. What do? Do you call them and say, hey, I forget what just happened, but there's a state trooper? Huh? We take a poll, we put it on the screen right now, there'd be 2% of us that would do that. 98% of us, what would you do? I'll see you on the side of the road, buddy. And as you pass them, you are the one now with the eye contact the entire way. Oh, yes. You feel good. That's a hint of the story that we're about to dive into, the minor prophets. It's an unusual minor prophet in that it's not a prophet speaking, it's the story of the minor prophet. Now, Hosea is the closest minor prophet that comes to it, and Hosea goes back and forth between his story and him speaking, but this time it's just narrative. It's narrative all the way through. From the very beginning, verse 1, boom, it's narrative of the story of Jonah. But hang on. Before you get to the story of Jonah, you've got to back up because there is a little bit of history here. There's a little bit of history that it's just not God showing up to Jonah one day and saying, hey, I need you to tell somebody about me. There's a little bit of history here. So let's go. I'll put the words on the screen. You don't have to look this one up because it's 2 Kings, but go to the book of Jonah. You want to be in the book of Jonah today. But back in 2 Kings, now the king of Assyria went through all the land. This was Shalmaneser, the fourth. That's the king that went through all the land. And he went up to Samaria and besieged it for 3 years. Matter of fact, this king, during that siege on Samaria, he died. He died, and his son, Sargon II, came in and had to finish the siege. They sieged this thing for 3 years. That meant nobody in, nobody out, no food in, no water, no supplies. They laid siege. It's like if somebody were, while we were in this church, would circle the church. All we would have was what we have inside. Sure, you said, well, I brought some potluck. Well, that would last us for today and maybe tomorrow. But by Tuesday this week, when these guys are still around the church, we'd start to get hungry. 3 years they were locked up. So even the king that started it, Shalmaneser, he didn't finish it. His son did. He died. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away to Assyria. Now, to get this idea here, they've come and they've sieged it. They've punished them for 3 years, made them hungry and made them suffer. And now they finally get to them. They finally just open the gates or whatever. We can't take it anymore. Assyria comes in and takes them captive and carries Israel away to Syria. And placed them in Halah by the harbor and the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. So now they take them out of their homeland and they place them in a foreign culture. This was the big Assyrian approach to things. They would move you into a foreign culture, a foreign area, so you were vulnerable, so you had to kind of rely on them. They'd move somebody else into your neighborhood, keep moving the pieces around so that you couldn't kind of build up a defense because you didn't know the language, you didn't know anybody in the area, you were transplanted. And so they would transplant somebody into your house. This house swap idea. That's what Assyria did. It was about 700 years before Jesus. They made them suffer. They were the thorn in Israel's flesh. They were just hated by Israel. So now we open our Bibles to the book of Jonah. You got your Bible? Go to the book of Jonah. We're about 700 years. Well, when they were taken captive, 700 years before Christ. Now Jonah starts right into the narrative. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, arise, verse 2, saying, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. Well, hold the phone. Nineveh, that great city. By the way, the expression here, great city, is not just large. It's not just talking about, hey, go to the big city. It's talking about an important city, that great city. Go to that important place called Nineveh. Oh, by the way, Nineveh is one of the key cities for Assyria. You're talking to an Israelite prophet, a Jewish prophet who knows very well. I mean, his family had to try to survive through the siege. They were a violent people. Matter of fact, it will even say so a little bit later. These are violent people, and they've been violent to my family. You want me to go to them? You want me to call them up and warn them that there's trouble ahead? Are you kidding? You can feel the hot blood rush through Jonah. This isn't right, God. This isn't right that you would have me go talk to them. They've hurt me. They've hurt my family. This is one of their key cities. The whole book of Jonah, 4 chapters long. It's a great little read, 4 chapters. The whole book, though, is just really discombobulated. Everything that should happen doesn't happen, and everything that shouldn't happen happen. I mean, there's just anything that someone's supposed to do, they don't do. Jonah, a prophet for God, decides to disobey God and run. He's rebellious. The sailors, the pagan sailors who are worshiping a bunch of gods, when they throw Jonah overboard, they start worshiping the true God. These sailors aren't supposed to get converted like that. Well, hey, the king of this most powerful Nineveh, pagan, violent, proud Assyria, ends up bowing down and worshiping the God of this rebellious prophet. Nothing happens. A fish swallows a man. Cows wear sackcloth and ashes. Nothing that's supposed to happen happens, and everything that's not supposed to happen happens, except for one. God is constant. I want to go save people. That's always been his MO. I want to save people. Everything else is confusing. Nothing else lines up. Fish swallowing a person, a cow wearing sackcloth and ash, a pagan king worshiping the true God of heaven, a prophet of God running on a ship. It doesn't make sense. But God is constant. Hey, I want to save people. Violent people that have hurt me, God? Yeah, I want to save them too. This doesn't make sense. The whole book is kind of confusing like that. Just nothing that's supposed to happen happens. But here in this Jonah narrative, there's five lessons. I think it would be, there's 100 lessons, surely, but 5 would be about right for us to digest today. So let's do 5. In your worship bulletin, you have two inserts. One is an annual survey. We do it every year. It's online as well as in your bulletin. You can put that in the offering as it comes by at the end. But there's also a study guide. So you want to grab that study guide and you want to follow along. Fill in some notes. You got your pens or your pencils. You're going to follow along. We've already read verse 1 and verse 2. Let's go to verse 3. But I'm going to throw these at you. We'll just give them to you. You can write them in. Take that study guide. Lesson number 1. Lesson number 1 from the story of Jonah. Here it is. Being too far from the presence of God is impossible. Lesson number 1. Being too far from the presence of God is impossible. Too far. You can't. All right, let's learn about this. Verse 3. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish. Flee from what? Flee from the presence of the Lord. By the way, You can insert the language used. You can insert will just like you can presence. He went to flee from the will of God. Will, presence. It's synonymous. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he's at Joppa, the Mediterranean. He's headed out to Tarshish. That's away. He's headed out away. He wasn't even supposed to. He didn't even need to get on a ship. It was all a land hike. It was a bit of a trip, but it was a land hike to Nineveh. He didn't need to get on a ship, so there was no fooling anybody. It wasn't like he got on the ship and then went left instead of right. No, he didn't need to get on that ship. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Twice. Hey, by the way, it's from the presence of from the will of God. This is, and you can already know just from that verse that there is trouble. We're in for a doozy, or a whale of a story is what they say. It's a doozy. Whenever you run from the presence of the Lord, your life is about to get very, very interesting. May not be what you want, but it will get interesting. So Jonah, the main spiritual guy, right? He's the spiritual guy in the story. You know, we've got them all lined up. We've got the pagan sailors, pagan king, the cows that are in Nineveh. It talks about the livestock there. We've got this fish that will show up. But we got Jonah. He's the spiritual guy. And he's running from God. He's running from the presence of the Lord. He jumps on this boat, gets hit with a storm. The sailors are trying to survive. They throw everything except for the human life overboard. Everything goes over. They're pleading with their gods. Hey, pray to your God. How many gods do you have? I have 17 of them. Get them all out here. How many do you have? 12? Well, get those. And they've got them all out there, and they're praying. Praying to the God of storms, praying to the God of sea, praying to the God of the clouds, praying to the God they are praying to every God. It's rough. And then, of course, they find out, hey, we've got this one guy that bought that ticket, and where's he at? They go to his seat, and he's conked out. And so they said, hey, Jonah, get up here. And then they roll the dice and say, hey, Jonah. They're not immediately suspect that he's the problem, but they believe that he knows the problem. Hey, Jonah, who's your God? What's your occupation? And where are you from? But tell us your story, because something in your story is going to inform us. Well, Jonah didn't need to tell them their whole story. He just skipped right to the point. Verse 9 here. So he said to them, I am a Hebrew. And that was not a bragging term. Hebrew was kind of a slang term. It was a little, it was pejorative, negative. But he said, I'm a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God. So when they asked him to line up his gods, he said, I got one God, God of heaven, God of sea, and God of land. The last we heard from Jonah in verse 3 was that he was going to flee from the presence of the Lord. And then he pops up and says, oh, by the way, the God I serve is the God of heaven. You can't go up. He's there. He's also the God of the sea. You can't come out on the water because he's over this. And certainly don't stay on the land because he's right there. Jonah admits his little sermonette to these people about God is, hey, there's no way I can get away from God. By the way, I'm stuck. It's it. That's it. You can't get away from God. That's our point, right? Being too far from the presence of God is impossible. You cannot go far enough because he's the God of heaven. You can't go up. He's the God of the sea. You can't go there. He's the God of the land. You can't go anywhere and get away from the presence of the Lord. And it reminds me this little story-ette somebody told sometime. The young boy, 6 years old. Little tantrum. Finally put his foot down. Mom and Dad, I am out of here. I am running away. He packed his little backpack, threw it over his shoulder, didn't look back as he slammed the front door. I am out of here, was his last call over his shoulder. About 20 minutes later, Mom and Dad, worried of course, saw him walk in front of the house again. About 20 minutes later, there he comes again. 20 minutes later, Comes back, walking back in front of the house. Finally, Dad steps out and says, doesn't seem like you're making it very far. Yeah, he said, I'm running away. The problem is you told me to never cross the street alone. I'm stuck going around the block. I can't cross the street alone. You say, I'm done with you, God. Where are you going to go? Huh? Where are you going to go when you're done with God? He's the God of heaven, of the sea, and of the dry land. Where are you going to go? You can run, but you can't go far enough away. Elton Trueblood, that Quaker author and theologian. Once a Christian has become a member of Christ's company, he must be ready to give up. Insert it into your study guide. His personal freedoms, such as any soldier, no longer is to be the sole arbiter of his own time and energy. He cannot be free to use his own money. His personal plans must be available for changing. We go and come as we like, as no soldier can do. We give or withhold giving as we like. We serve when we get around to it. Trueblood says, no, this doesn't work. Obedience is considered an irrelevant notion, and the theme of onward Christian soldiers is so alien to our experience. That is, we say, hey, God, I'm in. But then we think we are the arbiters of our own time and resources. No, God, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. This idea of onward Christian soldiers, you join the military, any branch of our military. You do it. You join the Marines, done. Navy, Coast Guard, Army, Air Force. Every one of them will be a very similar experience. You have now joined a company from which you now take orders. You do not provide the orders. You do not provide the instruction. It's a very rough life if you do. Try. No. Jonah, you're not giving the orders here. You have joined the company as a follower of God, and now you take the orders. But somehow crept into Christianity is this idea that I can get into the will of God. Remember that will and presence are interchangeable. I can be under the will of God, but still deciding my own. No, God says this is different. You cannot escape my presence. You cannot escape my will. God is God. We expect children to have a certain amount of dependence upon their parents. Physical needs, their care, their instruction comes from their parents. But as we grow up and we face God, we say, God, all right, let me tell you how it's going to go. I hear you in these areas. These other areas don't make sense to me. I'm not going to do them now. That doesn't work for parents. Because parents, what do parents say? Because I said so. That's the last line we've got, right? I said so. The only one that's beyond that is I brought you into the world. Right? That's our last. After that, we're just, God says, listen, because I said so. Oh, why? Because I brought you into the world. I'm the God of heaven, the sea, and earth. You cannot go too far from his presence. You cannot go too far from his will. All right, number 2. Prayer from the fish belly was heard. Lesson number 2, study guide. Keep writing it in. Lesson from the fish belly was heard. Now, right here. And he said, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction. This is his prayer. Verse 2, chapter 2, verse 2. I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard me. I was thrown into the darkness of this belly. But you heard me, God, from the belly of a fish. Verse 7, keep reading. Verse 7. When my soul fainted within me. That's an old expression for I just became so discouraged. When my soul fainted within me, I became discouraged. I remembered the Lord, and my prayer went up to you into your temple. In other words, even in your darkest discouragement, in your depression, God hears your prayer. Didn't feel like it. I can't imagine a darker place on this planet. Jonah, when he told him, hey, listen, throw me overboard, he didn't say throw me overboard because I know my God's going to provide an island and a little flotation device here. He said, throw me overboard because I might as well die. Throw me overboard. He went in over the edge of the boat into the water thinking, I am breathing my last. He had no idea. It was unprecedented that a fish came up, sucked him in, and now the very man who thought he was going to die is now in a dark, damp, warm, cushy intestinal tract of some fish. Weeds, he actually says in his prayer, weeds are wrapped around my head. The weeds are wrapped around his head. He's in this smelly, warm, damp. You just touch it. It's like touching the back of someone's throat. Just that kind of, ooh. He said, in that environment, the furthest you can imagine being from God, I cried, but God heard me. In the darkest moment of our lives, beloved, God hears us. Hallelujah. Number 3, it is impossible to sidetrack God. God is relentless. You cannot foil his plans. You can't do it. Nice try. We've all tried it. We have all been students in a classroom, and we've tried it. I will never forget Mr. Norris, my chemistry teacher, my high school chemistry teacher with a sick sense of humor. They came for the final exam. Final exam. We're all in the classroom. He is nowhere to be seen. Finally, he comes whistling a little tune into the classroom with nothing. Now, when we're sitting in the classroom expecting a final and the teacher walks in with nothing, not a briefcase, not a binder, not a stack of papers, come on, every student is watching his hands. Wait a minute. Do you see what I'm seeing? I turned to the guy next to me. Do you see what I'm seeing? Yeah, I see what you're seeing. He's got nothing. Yes. I knew I didn't need to stay up late and study last night. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Mr. Norris starts chatting with us, and you know how teachers are. You know their pet topics. You get them sidetracked on those, you can spend an hour talking about nothing that means nothing, but they like to talk about it. You know, it's talking. He's talk. 10 minutes go by. We have got him going. He's talking about something. He was into greenhouses and planting plants, and we were getting him. And he finally he's sitting on the edge of the desk. He finally gets up off the edge of the desk, and he goes over to the bulletin board in the classroom and takes off the tacks that are holding a poster up. And behind this poster is this stack of final exams stuck to the bulletin board. Now we're the ones crying, and he's the one laughing because we've blown 10 minutes of our class period just chatting it up about some dumb greenhouse plant something. And he said, yep, got him here for you guys. Oh, you didn't? Oh. And he handed them out, and sure enough, final it was. You think you got God sidetracked. Oh, God, yeah, God, what about it? And he's off, and he's talking. You think you got him sidetracked. And then he comes right back to you. Listen. This is in verse 10. Jonah's just finished his prayer. So the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto the dry land. God can do that. You think you got God sidetracked, and now he's thinking about your prayer, and he's listening to your prayer in the belly of a fish, and there's this whole fish thing. Surely this thing is going to mean that somebody else is going to, and the fish vomits you. And then verse 3, chapter 3, verse 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time. Jonah thought he had God. God, I thought we were talking about something. God comes back, says, oh, by the way, I need to go back to what we were talking about earlier, Jonah. I need you to go to Nineveh. Oh, God, I thought I had you sidetracked there. No. God can cause a fish to vomit to make what he needs to happen. And vomit it was. I mean, that's vomit. It was a vomit. Bah! And Jonah thought, well, let bygones be bygones. I had the opportunity. No. I was over in Beirut, Lebanon. Took me up to Biblios, longest continuous occupied city known. And they take me around this little cove, and let me just point out to you with this nice little arrow that I can, right about there, is where tradition says Jonah was chucked up by this fish. Right about there, they pointed it out. There's a bunch of hotels that don't care diddly about Jonah, but they're just along the Mediterranean there, some houses. And there's a little gelato shop up on the highway that was good. Right down there on the beach, that's where Jonah landed. Prophets and kings. God's messengers in the great cities are not to become discouraged. Why? Because the Lord would cheer every such worker with the same message that he gave to the Apostle Paul. Be not afraid, but speak. Hold not thy peace, for I am with thee. Why are you with me? Why are you so constant? Why are you so undistractable on this? For I have much people in this city. That's what God thinks about. That's what God thinks of. When he moves you into a new neighborhood, you say, oh, this is great. It has a nice view of Longs. Look at that. Oh, that's great. God's thinking, yeah. And I've got a couple of people on this block. And then you get a new job or you transition and you're thinking, yeah, this is great, more money. And God's thinking, yeah, and I've got people in the office there that are lost. It's just what God thinks about. He's always thinking about it. You can't sidetrack, you can't foil his plan. You say, God certainly must be giving up on, no. He's not giving up on you. You can crowd your life, you can fill your life so it's so crowded you don't have a minute to share Jesus. You can't volunteer, you can't go, you can't share Jesus. You're so busy. Well, God will cause a fish to vomit if he has to get you in a place and me in a place where we'll share. It's just, I've got lost people. That's what he's all about. And I suppose there will come a day when some of us who have just persisted in our busyness, fish vomiting and all, we have persisted in our busyness where God just can't get a word in edgewise that he will one day have to say, I need to move on. I'm sorry. I can't use you. But you will not foil God's plan. God will seek and save the lost somehow. And church, if it isn't us, if it isn't me, and if it isn't you, he'll do it. But we'll wish he had used us. Number 4, we've got just 5, so we're trucking through. God can. Listen to these words. God can, will, and actually must do a new you. This is not an improvement of the old. God is not looking to just improve you, do some edits, a little change for spelling and grammar. No. He says, he's the teacher that hands that paper back to you and says, thank you very much, but let's rewrite this thing from start to finish. The good news is that he does it. He doesn't just tell you to go do your paperwork. No, listen. This is Jonah's sermon. This is the complete sermon. Wouldn't you want Jonah to be your preacher? Jonah began to enter the city on the first day's walk. He cried out and said, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. It's that right there. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. 5 words in Hebrew. That was his sermon. Doop, 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 doop. Thank you very much. I'll keep going. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. It's a little chintzy. 5 words in Hebrews. I mean, come on. God sent you through the belly of a fish. It seems like you could give a little more. There's no mention of their sin. He doesn't point out what they need to, their sin. He doesn't even mention God. Hey, go to God. Talk to God. There's very little effort. He just says, you're going to be overthrown. In 40 days, you're over. Ah! But it's the last word of that sermon that we filled in our study guide that becomes an operative word that's worth noticing. Nineveh shall be overthrown. I want to write this out for you in Hebrew. We did a Hebrew word last week. Let's do it again this week. Here it is. Excuse my Hebrew here. Just write it in your study guide. There you go. It's actually a little vowel there because you know they write, first of all, they write the opposite direction and then they write in consonants, and the vowels are kind of just helter-skelter. If you're a really good Hebrew scholar, you don't even use vowels, you just use consonants. But we'll use some vowels here. So we've got a little T under that one and a little, well, the T is actually an A, but all right, so there's our word. Hafak. H-F-K. And the K really has an H on it too, so it's more like hafak. All right, that's our word, hafak. 40 days and you're going to be hafak. Well, apparently that got their attention, as we find out in a minute. Hafak, whoa, we don't want hafak. Or do we? Is it as scary as it sounds? I want to take you to the same word just a little bit earlier in our Bibles. 1 Samuel chapter 10 and verse 6. Then the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you will prophesy with them and be turned. You will be hafak. You'll be turned into another man. The word hafak is really just to be turned over. A 180. You'll be turned around. You will be changed to a new you. 40 days. 40 days. Hafak. Is hafak destroyed? No. Well, the Jews, certainly Jonah was hoping that's what God meant. All the while, God gave him this message to give to Nineveh. God is thinking something totally different. I love it. Even the prophet Jonah can misunderstand the Hebrew. When Jonah's thinking, you're going to be hafak, God is saying, you're going to be hafak. Yes. So what happened? They were hafak. So the people of Nineveh believed God, proclaimed a fast, and put on sackcloth. This was the proud, violent Assyrians. They believed God, put on sackcloth from the greatest to the least of them. Then the word came to the king of Nineveh. He said, hey, king, guess what? This prophet, this Hebrew prophet, the ones we besieged and kind of beat up, the Hebrew prophet has come, and he said, we're going to be hafaked. Well, he arose from his throne and said, I want to be hafaked. I want to be turned around. He laid aside his robe, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat in ashes. The proud king became hafaked. He turned himself, God turned him around. He became a humble man. Yeah, Jonah's sermon was right. They were hafaked. Just wasn't like he had hoped. But it really was. In the heart of Jonah, I believe it really was what he wanted. Even he knew it was right. Much like you, when that guy flies by you and you know there's the trooper down the highway, you know what to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know you would want somebody to call and say, hey, just slow down a little bit. There's a trooper up here. I don't want that. $107 ticket. At the very end of Jonah's prayer, which is the last words we hear from him before he preaches. So he's praying. This is Jonah's prayer closet, the belly of the fish. The very last line, listen to it. But I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay with what I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. That's the last line before he walks up into that pulpit in Nineveh and begins to preach. His last line in his prayer is deliverance. Salvation is of the Lord. God, you're in charge of salvation. This is your deal. This is what you want to do in the world. And then he goes and preaches, hafak, hafak, hafak. In his heart of hearts, he knew what God meant, but he didn't want to believe. He didn't want it. Come on. Sock it to him, God, one time. Number 5, God does not give up on me. Hallelujah. God does not give up on me. Jonah's final words in the book of Jonah, he's sitting out underneath on the overhang overlooking Nineveh. And it happened when the sun rose and God prepared a vehement east wind. That worm had just eaten his plant. And the sun beat on Jonah's head, so he grew faint. And he wished death for himself. And he said, it is better for me to die than to live. This isn't the first time Jonah thought that and felt that way. When he was on the ship, what do you think that was when he told the sailors, hey, throw me overboard? It is better for me to die than to live. I'll go, just throw me overboard. Let me drown in the sea. I'm giving up on life. Jonah was a little bit like that. He just, woo. You say, man, I feel like that too. One week I'm up, I'm experiencing God. The next week I'm down, I'm struggling with depression. You have a friend in Jonah. And you know what? God didn't give up with him on the boat. When he had him throw him overboard so that he could die. I wish that I could die. God said, oh, here's a fish. I'll save you. And now overlooking Nineveh, Jonah is back there saying, I wish I could die. And the book never finishes because it's just this cycle. God is going to save him. We know God is going to pull something out to save Jonah. We just know it because he did with the fish. He's just that patient. But the last words of the book of Jonah are not Jonah's. They're actually God's. God ends the book. Then God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? And he said, it is right for me to be angry even to death. But the Lord said, and this is the final declaration, you have pity on a plant for which you have not labored, nor made it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a day. And should I not pity Nineveh, that great city in which are more than 120,000 persons? And the book ends. God saying, Jonah, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm about. Everything I'm about is about saving people. All this other stuff is just one thing. It's to help me get to people. I want to save people, Jonah. You included. I have always read this as I imagine you might have as well. I have always read this. And if you're doing the teacher thing, all right, place yourself in the story. Who are you? When you read this story, who do you become? Jonah. I think of myself as Jonah. Okay, Jonah. Okay. But maybe you're not Jonah. Maybe you are, and that's fine too, but maybe you're not Jonah. Maybe you're the people of Nineveh. You feel like a nameless person in a city, doing a job, coming to church, doing your thing. Does God really know me? Does God really think of me? Is God really concerned about me? That last line of that last question of the book, it ends in a question. Should I not pity Nineveh, that great city in which are more than 120,000 persons? They've been violent. It actually ends with, they don't even know their left hand from their right hand. They don't know what's right. But I've got to save them, Jonah. I've got to save them. And maybe you feel like that nameless, hopeless, helpless person that has done things in life that you have been violent, immoral, wrong. Maybe you're not Jonah. Maybe you're an Assyrian in Nineveh. God says, you're on my mind too. And he puts up that plant so that Jonah begins to appreciate this plant and then is frustrated when it dies. And God says, you care about this plant. Shouldn't I care about those people, those nameless people in Nineveh? There are exactly 5 living entities in my house. Myself, my wife, 2, my daughter Cana, 3, my son Micah, 4, and 1 plant. That's it. There's not a fish, a bird, cat, dog, nothing. We've got 1 plant. It's easy to go on vacation that way. You just walk out, hey, did you get somebody to cover the plant? Yeah. Okay, good. Everybody else goes with us. But here's the plant. This is the 5th member of our family. You know, we send you our Christmas card. This is what's in it. This is our 5th member. But we do. When we leave, we call up the neighbor and say, hey, you know, remember our garage code? Yep. That's a little concerning when they remember your garage code. But you remember our garage code? Yeah. You can still get into our house? Yep. Hey, we're going to be gone for the next week. Would you go water that plant? Yeah. My wife walked in the other day and kind of looked at it and said, looks like it's at the end of its life. God says, you take care of a plant. You think about it. Hey, is the plant doing all right? Did it get watered while we were gone? Hey, have you watered the plant? You think about the plant. But you don't think about the 120,000 people that live in Loveland, that live in Longmont, that live in Fort Collins, live. God says, I'm fine with you caring about plants. Care about your plant. But do you think you can't forget the plant? I can't forget these 120,000. I can't forget that nameless person. They've done wrong, yes. Oh, man, they've been violent. I can't get them off my mind. And the fifth and final lesson from the story of Jonah is God does not give up on me. He doesn't give up on me as Jonah. He doesn't give up on me as the violent, immoral Assyrian Ninevite. God doesn't give up. That's what he's about, seeking to save the lost. He wants to hafak. I want to change. I want to turn you around. I want to give you a new you. I want to do my work in you. 5 lessons from Jonah, and there it is. So I wish you'd grab out that Connect card. If you're a guest here, we'd love to hear from you. Guest here, if we got a little gift, we want to zip you in the mail if you just fill out that information. You said, I don't have a pen. Who has a pen? Well, I do, but let's say you don't. That number, you take that number out, you can text that number your information. You just say, I'm a guest, here's my information. If you're an Assyrian Ninevite, if you're a Jonah that has run from God, if you are someone that you feel like you're nameless, faceless before God, you don't know if God cares, and you want to reach out and connect. You say, I need to hear from God. I need to sit down. I need to study the Bible. I need to get ready to give my life to Jesus. I want him to hafak my life. I want it to turn around. I need you to pray for me. Whatever it is, you fill out that Connect card. You put it in the offering envelope bags as they come around. Put in your survey, your church survey, or you text that number, 970-541-9919. You text it. And these are ushers this morning as they collect our tithes and our offerings, as we give back of our means, our tithe that God has entrusted to us, our offerings. He's called on us to be generous. As we do that, let's sing this theme song about ancient words that still have the power to change us, to hafak, change us, turn us around. I make one more appeal to you. I know there are some who have not given their life to Jesus, have not said, yes, Lord, take me, turn me around. Maybe you're that Assyrian king or anybody else in that Ninevite city. Would you consider it today? You just note it. I need help following Jesus. I want to prepare for baptism. Whatever it is, you mark that down. We'll come alongside you. We'll journey with you. Let's let these ancient words work in our lives.
Holy words long preserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope, give us strength, help us cope in this world where'er we roam. Ancient words will us today. Impart ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Oh, let the ancient words impart.
The Lord bless you, and the Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Until again we meet in worship. Amen.
Just one more word. We're glad you've joined us today. You're always welcome to join us here in worship. But we want to be available to you. If you have a prayer request, we have a prayer team that are eager to be praying for you. If you want to connect with a pastor, ask a question. If you feel you'd like to help support these teachings being online, I want to invite you to contact the number on the screen, 970-667-7403, or the website. We'll put that on the screen for you. You go there, you can contact us, leave a prayer request, connect with us. We'd be honored to hear from you and how we can help you in your spiritual journey. But until next time, know that Jesus is searching for you.